Your product isn't the problem. Most people think they have a marketing problem. In fact, for most people, when they contact me, they ask for marketing help. But the reality is, when we dive into it, the problem is that they have a messaging issue because the right product with the wrong pitch or the wrong message will fail every day. A local glass installer contacted me telling me he was tired of struggling. He had tried everything and nothing had worked. His work was top notch, but almost no one knew he even existed. He'd been in the business for almost 40 years and he was struggling to make ends meet every month. If you feel like you've tried all the ads and nothing's worked, you've tried all the big ideas and listened to everyone's advice, this episode will show you how to fix the words before you throw out the product or get frustrated at the marketing. I'm Ryan Holck. This is Brand on the Rocks, and let's get into it. Welcome to Brand on the Rocks, the podcast that distills bold ideas into clear messages you can actually use. Each week, we serve up conversations, audits, and straight pours of insight to help you cut through the noise and grow your business. Hosted by brand strategist Ryan Holck, this is where clarity comes neat and your brand gets remembered. So for those of you who don't know, our family has a brick and mortar building or a brick and mortar business as well as marketing agency. And we had a glass problem. So we did some digging, found a name and a reference, and made a call. The guy who showed up, small, skilled local glass business. Repeat customers love him. Real estate agents contact him. The problem is no one outside that circle knows he exists. He admitted to me that he's got a marketing problem, that there is a tension and he has more capacity than he has days, that there are days that go by that he has no work. And he literally said, I've tried everything, nothing works. I've about had enough of this crappy economy. I don't want to change my website. I get compliments on it. What else can I do? Ads aren't working. They just cost too much. The challenge was he has a great product. When it comes to glass, when it comes to mirrors for commercial, for residential, he's one of the best in the area, but his pitch is horrible. There's no consistency in his message. There's no clear promise in his website. He is invisible to anyone outside his current clients and friends. The crazy part is he knew he had a problem. He admitted it to me face to face, on the phone, via text, but he didn't want to hear about what was causing the problem and how to fix it. He just wanted pat, fast answers. I'm curious, where are you blaming the economy, the algorithm, or ads when the real issue is that people still don't understand what you do and why it matters to them? The reality is this guy didn't need a new offer. He needed a new way to say it. He needed a plan to get his message out in a world that had dramatically changed since he started his business 40 years ago. It's the week between Christmas and New Year's, and got just a couple days in the office trying to wrap up a lot of things. But one of the things we did this Christmas season as a family was we watched Christmas movies more than normal, like with intentionality, trying to watch a couple of them every week. And one of those movies that we watch actually with friends is A Christmas Story. And that's the one with the kid whose dream is to get a Red Ryder BB gun. And his, the famous line is, "You'll shoot your eye out." And he ends up having a BB break his glasses. And really, it's set in the 50s and kind of this whole nostalgia of the past. But one of the scenes in there that gets me every time is that he has a decoder ring. And it was actually made, or at least in the movie, connected to the Ovaltine company. And he gets this decoder ring and he listens to the radio and he hears the message, and he's trying to take the message and decode it using the decoder ring. And at the end of it, the message is something to the effect of drink more Ovaltine. And he's frustrated because is that really all that this message could be? But the funny thing is, so many people that contact me are forcing their customers or potential customers to use a decoder ring to understand their website and marketing. They have put some sort of barrier of explanation between themselves and their customer. And it's like sitting there with a ring, spinning it around, trying to figure out what letter goes in each spot. And if you force your buyers to do that, you're not going to have buyers. If your marketing needs a decoder ring, people won't stick around long enough to crack the code. They're just going to leave. This guy, this glass guy, he told me, I've got all these compliments about my website, but I go to the website and it didn't sell. It didn't explain what he did. There was just a bunch of photos. There was buttons that didn't go anywhere. There was a phone or text option. And I don't think there was 100 words on the entire website. What he thought was fantastic, what his friends told him looked amazing, didn't actually share a story that would connect him with his audience. It was so vague and focused on the wrong things that the only place it made sense was to him. He didn't need a new offer. He needed a new way to say it. And my suspicion is that that might be the issue in your business. Imagine that your ideal customer comes to your website. They have a bowl of cereal and a decoder ring. If that's what it takes to figure it out, there's a problem. And you're going to struggle to close deals every time. So how do we as business owners, how do we as business leaders move from this, I got the right product with the wrong pitch, to the right product with a clear pitch? Well, before you touch ads, before you've messed with a funnel, before you've gone and posted 5,000 things on social media, before you've written a website, you have to get your story straight. It starts with the story. If you don't start there, you're going to be starting in the wrong place and with the wrong foundation. There are several questions that I like to start with when I'm trying to figure out what is the story we need to be sharing about this business. And it starts with, who am I hoping to reach? Who do you best serve? In the case of this glass guy, he knew he had specific types of commercial clients, specific types of residential clients that he wanted to reach. The next question is, what problem do they have that needs solving? I know if you've been listening for a while, this sounds familiar to some of the other questions I've asked, and you're right, because we have to start with the right foundation. Next one is, what solution do I provide to address the problem? Okay. When does my solution give to people? What's the next step that I want them to take? Those 5 questions are going to begin to give you some structure of what story should be told. And I know that they seem simple, and I know they may seem ridiculous to even think about, should I write these down? For years, I kept thinking, I just know this stuff intuitively. Like, I don't need to write it down. I know it. I know who I'm trying to reach. I know the problem they have. I know what I'm providing to help them, when I'm providing. And it kept coming back to the fact that every time I didn't get it out of my head onto a piece of paper, there was a moment that I had to think about it that lacked clarity. There was a moment where I couldn't hand it to a team member. I couldn't hand it to somebody and say, could you write me a couple social posts for this? This is what I'm trying to accomplish. Does it make sense to somebody else? Does it make sense once it gets out of my head? And I'm telling you, especially for those businesses that have 5 or fewer employees, you're multitasking, sharing jobs, sharing tasks. Yes, you have roles, but sometimes you've got to share stuff. If you've not documented answers like this, it makes it really easy to lose the story. Listen, if this glass guy had sat down and answered these questions in plain English, it would have changed how he pitched and talked about his business. Yes, his audience was local homeowners, residential people, small businesses who had broken fogged glass or were in need of mirrors. The problem is there was safety issues, there's ugly windows, there's heat loss, there's money wasted, there's fogged windows. Solution, he had fast, clean, expert glass replacement. His win was he helped people feel safe because their glass wasn't broken. They saved money on energy. Like, their place looked new again. It looked refreshed. Their remodels looked amazing. And a clear next step that called people to action, allowed them to schedule, request a quote. Those 5 things would have dramatically changed how he talked about his business and how people understood his business. And once you have a clear picture of the story that you need to share, then you can begin building messaging around it instead of just guessing. Remember, I just mentioned that I've had this problem in my own business. Like, I know these things, I don't need to write them down. But until you get them documented, you will continue to lack clarity in the delivery of them. Post them someplace. Put them up on a wall in your office. Put them near your desk, wherever you work, so that you can go, these are the things that are most important when I'm creating. This is the story we're trying to share. This is the idea we're trying to deliver. Okay. So that's really the first piece, is you've got to know the story, identify the brand message that you're trying to share. The next thing really to bring this transition towards clarity is simplicity. You've got to learn how to distill your brand message, your story, into its most important pieces. Even with a good story, most brands still make people work too hard. If your customer has to think too much, you will lose them. You have seconds on a website. 7 seconds is kind of the standard, and it's actually getting a little less than that. When you're face to face with someone, you maybe have 15 to 30 seconds. But I'll tell you, when I'm at a meetup or at an event and I ask someone what they do, I've pretty much decided in 10 to 15 seconds if I'm going to keep part of this conversation or not. Not because of not liking the person, but because if they can't tell me in a heartbeat what they do, wow, it's really hard to stay on track with them. So here's a few questions to help you drive home how are we going to speak with simplicity about this story. Okay. So where is my audience in the customer journey? Like, am I talking to someone who's never heard of us, doesn't have any idea about our brand, our business, our products, our services, or am I talking to somebody who's got some experience, got some knowledge that we can play off of, that we can add to? What details do they need right now to understand my product or service? We tend as business owners to want to over explain everything. We have 150 details, and if I don't get all 150 out in the first meeting, and I feel like I messed up. But sometimes the details the person in front of you needs are only 2 things, because we want them to take the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step with us. Third thing, how can I explain these details so that people can quickly grasp them without confusion? Make it as simple as possible. What is the simplest way that you can talk about what you do? And this is the kicker. Would someone with no inside knowledge understand this explanation? If describing your business requires acronyms, requires an MBA to understand the language you're using, requires that the person has a graduate level of education, you are going to lose people. They need to be able to read your marketing, read your explanations, and go, I may not understand all the details, but I get the big picture of where this is going. And then lastly, is there a story or a visual or a simple example that I can share? Give people something to hang on to. Give them something beyond the information that they will emotionally connect with, or they will visually remember, or they'll go, they painted a picture for me. I remember they talked about so and so, or this client, this problem, this. Those are the things that help us remember. Those are the things that help us emotionally connect with someone, that make it a story, not just marketing. Listen, if you are willing to simplify your message into easy everyday words, you will keep from having a disconnect. If you continue to speak over your customers, over your potential clients, over their heads, and force them to use a decoder ring to understand every time, there will always be a disconnect. No one is sitting at home hoping for more complicated marketing. They want to know in plain English, can you fix my problem? Is this the solution for me? If you make that difficult to answer, they will make it difficult for you to make money. I would encourage you, go look at your recent marketing, go look at your social content, go look at your LinkedIn, look at your website and say, grab one or two sentences and just ask, would a 12-year-old understand what this means? If not, simplify it. Heck, if you really want to know, copy a few lines, paste them into your AI, and just say, please tell me, please explain what this means to me, means in simple language, and see what it comes up with. I'm amazed. Sometimes it's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. You're explaining this idea, and sometimes it'll give you language that actually makes it simpler for you. Other times you confuse the AI, and my feeling is if you confuse the AI, you're confusing everyone. So take some time. Think about, would a 12-year-old understand this? Would the AI be able to simplify this for me? Would someone who is not already employed by my business understand what we're talking about here? Because that's the key to having the right story and telling it with simplicity. And the third part is you've got to tell it with strategy. You have to map a plan for actually sharing it. Because what we want to do is we want to shift from what we're going to say to where and how often we're going to say it. But once your story is clear and simple, then and only then does strategy really pay off. One of the goals of marketing is repetition, not for the sake of repetition, just because it's what we do. It costs money. We do it. But people on the receiving end take time to understand, absorb, grasp the heart of what you're doing and take action. That does not happen the first time. That happens after they've heard bits and pieces. And there's all sorts of stats out there that give crazy numbers. The reality is, it takes hearing the same message multiple times before people are going to act. Some people will tell you it's 10 to 12 times. Some people will tell you it's 30 times right now. The numbers are staggering. The point is, your message has to be so clear that you can share it in multiple ways, articulate it in different formats, but have the same heart of a message. Once your story is clear, that's when the strategy is going to pay off. The strategy of how do you actually now get it out in creative ways. So here's some questions about how do I build a strategy is, where does my audience spend time regularly? That seems ridiculous, but where do they already spend time? I see people chasing audiences on channels and advertising lanes that their audience doesn't exist on, or that such a small fraction of their audience exists on, that they're just wasting money. You don't market to retired folks on TikTok. You don't market to teens with email sequences. That's not their number one way of communicating. Efforts may get you somewhere, but you're going to waste a lot of time and energy and cost. Think about, where does my audience spend time regularly? What channels best deliver this story in that format or to that audience? Okay, I mentioned TikTok. If TikTok's a place you're going to spend time, if Instagram's a place you're going to spend time, if Facebook's a place you're going to spend time, think about, how do people on this platform typically deliver messages? Look and learn from what others are doing. Figure out and match those styles. Deliver it in your context with your message, but make sure the style matches. Third question, what type of content works best on those channels? I just kind of alluded at that, but just think about what is working there, what is not. Don't try and diverge. People show up in those places with an expectation of the way content will be delivered. Make sure you match it. And then think about what would it take to show up consistently on those platforms? Frequency, content volume, types of content. Like, what are we committing ourselves to? Because you've got a message now, you got a story, you've simplified it so that you're talking about the core things. We're talking about delivering it strategically, which means if you deliver it really well for 3 weeks and you stop and never show up again, you've wasted all of your time and effort. So take into account before you start, what will it take to show up consistently and how would we do it? And then figure out what is the next step I need to take to actually get started in this area. So often I see people who need marketing help want to do everything at once and expect that they're going to solve every marketing problem they have in 2 weeks or less. If I just do X, it will all be better. If I just do X, it will all be better. No, if you just do a piece of X for the next 6 weeks, you may start seeing traction. If you do it for the next 12 weeks, you're going to start seeing X. If you do it for the next 6 months, you're going to see even more. Intentionality is repetition. Repetition is the same message, similar idea, similar concept over and over and over and over again with intentionality so that people begin to recognize your brand name and this topic are synonymous. This glass guy told me ads don't work. He told me he'd spent money on all these things. He didn't have money to try again. Even with strategy, he didn't have money. Ads work when your message is simple, when it's clear, and we've shown often enough to be remembered. But if that message is muddy, more spend, throwing more money at the spend is just going to buy confusion. It is not going to buy clarity or close deals. Clarity is the key to standing out in a crowded, noisy marketing landscape. Strategy is going to amplify that clarity. It cannot replace it. Don't think for a moment, if I just spend a little more, it will all get better. If I just get a little more clear, it will all get better. That's your number one goal. So here's what I want you to think about from an implementation standpoint. Think about your business. Think about what you do, who you serve, and start with this. If I had one line to explain my business, how could I clearly share about my business? The glass guy could have said, I do glass and mirror for your home or office. That phrase alone would have changed his marketing. It would have changed how people understood what he did, the value he brought, rather than the haphazard that he was doing. That could have translated into something in print. It could have translated into some email follow-up. It could have been some ad headlines. It could have been the top of his website. The point is, you have to get your message clear first before you start thinking about how you're going to get the message out. This has been today's episode, another On the Rocks episode of Brand on the Rocks podcast. And if you feel like you have got the right product and the wrong pitch, I would love to chat with you because the right product and the wrong pitch is going to fail every time. Your product likely isn't the problem. In the last 20 years, there are less than 4 or 5 times where I've sat with someone and thought the problem is their product. Problem is usually the way you talk about it. It's the way you think about it. It's the way you message around it. The person across from you has no idea the value you bring with your product or service. They may not be your ideal customer, but they may know someone who is. But if you confuse them in the moment, they will never buy and they will never open their mouth to share about you to someone else. So fix the story, simplify the story, then build a strategy to share it where people actually are. Quit guessing about your story. Share it clearly and over and over. Remember, it's not about being the loudest voice in the room, it's about being the clearest. So, as we wrap, I want you to go back, I want you to listen to the three things: the story, there's 5 questions; the simplicity, there's 5 questions; the strategy, there's 5 questions. Answer those questions about your business. Begin to think about the answers, how they apply to your business. Then look at your content, look at something you've done recently. Choose something that is you decide is confusing based on your answers and rewrite it so that a stranger can understand it in 3 seconds or less. If you're not sure, phone a friend, call someone who will actually speak truth to you and ask them for their input. Even better, find a friend that maybe doesn't know the inside workings of your business, but will tell you truthfully and say, based on what you know about us, does this make sense? And find out. And then act on what they tell you. Don't start with defensiveness. Don't let it get the hackles up and bristle you. Listen to what they have to say, because at the end of the day, you need to win. And the only way you win is if the person across from you understands with clarity how you make them win with your product or service. If you see yourself today in the glass story, in the story of this guy who I tried to help, got a great product, but you're invisible, people don't know you exist. This is a sign to stop blaming the economy and start fixing the problem. Fix your message. Get a strategy, move forward. As always, I thank you for listening to the Brand on the Rocks podcast, for being with me. Until next time, this is Ryan Holck. Keep your ideas bold, your messages clear, straight up.